Good evening, friends. How are you all doing? Another late night chill stream. Why am I so low here? How do I move this? Okay, there we go. That's better. We got this too. We got the kitty cam also. There goes our music though. Music's back. Late night chill stream. Gonna get through some of my queue on my watch later on YouTube. Catching up with some of these new Mythvision titles. Did Peter start Christianity with a hallucination? Dude, Derek's got all the good titles. Did Paul know nothing about Jesus? His documentary, Did Jesus Really Fulfill 300 Prophecies? The evidence says no. John J. Collins, Apocalyptic Judaism Created Christianity? Don't even know where to start. I'm thinking this one.
Of ours, and of course everybody else who supports Mythvision. I know this may not be the right question, but I wonder why humans are so prone to believe a myth over the truth. I'm thinking of those people in Paul's day as well as today. How do you think the Jesus movement began if he wasn't a person? Was it started by James or Simon Peter?
Well, the last question part, obviously I think it's Peter, because Paul actually tells us that, right? Peter is the first person to have a revelation, and he has some quorum of 12 that he then convinced to either have or claim to have the same revelation. Revelation at that time could mean either a dream, you dream an encounter with a God and believe that it was real.
Probably the 12, like the Council of 12 in the Community Scroll, the Dead Sea Scrolls. There was a theme, a motif back then of having, like the 12 tribes of Israel, a Council of 12. When Paul mentions he appeared to Peter, James, the 12, and then to Paul, it wasn't even 12 at that point because Judas was gone and they hadn't elected the new guy.
Or a waking vision, and there's a variety of ways that waking visions were normal at the time. We have tons of examples in pagan literature as well. It's not just Christians, right? And Jewish literature too. There's a lot of halakhic literature that talks about ascension stories and revelation stories for rabbis and things like that. And Christianity fits into that model. So
Ascension and Revelations, Kabbalistic Merkava mysticism, Second Temple Judaism.
Peter, right? Peter would have the first vision. Now, the vision, of course, confirms basically an expectation. The expectation might actually predate Peter, right? We have hints at the Qumran text. The hints of the Qumran text of something like Christianity is already being predicted to occur. Now, the manuscripts are so mutilated and so fragmentary that it's impossible to really nail this down the way we would like to. But it is entirely possible that there was already a sect of Jews who were talking about this going to happen at some point. And then all that Peter adds is, you know what, I had a dream, Jesus came to me and says, it's done, he did it, and the end has begun, like it's the clock has started, we gotta start missionizing now. So the sort of nascent Christianity could predate him. It's possible. We can't confirm this or refute it, because we just don't have the evidence. It doesn't exist, doesn't survive. But Peter definitely is the one who started it. And then when Paul comes along...
And it's crazy that Peter ends up being the central figure in Total Yeshu. Peter is the double agent that goes and takes this Jesus believers to the Gentiles and makes it not kosher. So you guys realize that, right? According to Carrier, it's like Peter, because Paul says it, Peter has the revelation. Maybe Peter and James in the Ebionite sect.
He modifies it, and he's the one who makes Gentiles able to come in without converting to Judaism, and then that takes over, that just swamps the rest of the church. And so all future Christianity is this Gentile mutation of this Jewish sect. It's not the original.
Gentile mutation of a Jewish sect. No getting around
sect at all.
So many things to get into. One thing I noticed that you said, and this is what I hope people will vicariously live through Mythvision for, you make me back up. Like, as I listen to you, I'll get every other scholar under the sun and go, Richard's wrong in a certain area. And I act like you're wrong about everything else, but something, right? Then I hear you, and I love being a student, and I really want to listen to what you have to say. I don't think I have the answer and you have to. Right. And then you start explaining things, and I go, man, like, we're in this bubble of Christian studies, of New Testament studies, and we're not really thinking of the world, the Mediterranean world where this is at, and all the people that were brushing shoulders and ideas that were going on. So to pin down and be so dogmatic about what the hell we know, we need to pause. But anyway, that was my little revelation just now.
Right. We often don't know things. We have to be comfortable with that. I come from the tradition because I was trained up in Columbia University as a historian, not as a biblical exegete, right? I became one through my research and studies and peer-reviewed publications and all of that. But when you come up as a historian, what you're taught is to expect to be disappointed, right? Like, we're part of our mantra is often we just can't answer the question, right? And often you don't know for sure, and you have to like admit doubt and uncertainty.
Is it mantra or mantra? I always thought it was my mantra. I say mantra. He said mantra.
Things like this, and I find in New Testament studies there's not as much.
Is that how other people pronounce it? Mantra. Am I wrong?
Of that perspective, the actual perspective of actual historians, doesn't show up as much in New Testament studies. So if you come from a theology school, a theology PhD or divinity or something like that, you've been given a slightly different epistemology that might make you a lot less comfortable with admitting that you don't know stuff. And so I think maybe that does affect some of the historians who write in this field.
Or especially bucking up against the common understanding of something, especially when we're now like admittedly realizing that Judaism is anachronistic to even use the term like this thing we call Judaism, and how much impact Hellenism had within Jewish people's thinking. Like the level. I mean, I'll fill you in later on the Sepphoris trip we took and the things we saw, and I'm like, this is a Jewish guy's house, and oh, these are the elite Jewish people in this area. And I'm like, well, how are they monotheists? Because they can't be when you see what I saw. So anyway, another thing that T-Rose said that I thought was interesting.
Looks like Derek has like a, oh shit, I can't zoom. I'm not in Chrome.
And it's more of a psychological, there's probably a lot built into this question, but I like
the first part, which is the question of why humans are like this.
Why do people believe, or prone to believe, myth over the truth?
Yeah, so Daniel Dennett did a book, I can't remember the title of it right now. It's eluding me, but it's on this question of basically it's the anthropology and sociology of religion, and he summarizes the sort of state of the scholarship on this. So Daniel Dennett's book on this is the one to start at, because it summarizes all of the stuff and then has bibliographies that point you to certain authors like Guthrie's Faces in the Clouds and other authors. There have also been authors who've done like the anthropology and cognitive science of superstition in general. And these, I think, are important studies to look at because they're telling you the answer to this question. And one thing you can do is go to Wikipedia and type in list of cognitive biases. There's a page that's just called list of cognitive biases, and it's hundreds of entries long. And it just shows you that's how broken our brains are. Our brains are really badly designed, and they're highly prone to false belief. And it's really hard to fix that. And so really this idea of logic, rationality, scientific method, critical thinking, these are rather late cultural inventions. They're tools. They're kind of like firmware reinstalls that we have to plug in. Our brains don't have this stuff innately. And in fact, our brains don't take it innately either. Like it takes a lot of work even to get it in there. And then of course, you easily will start falling in the ruts of your brain's natural reasoning capabilities, which are pretty poor. So you have to actively struggle to use these tools of reasoning to correct for the flaws and inability of your brain to actually correctly reason. And that takes a lot of effort, but also you have to know that you have to do it, right? So you have to know what the skills are, and then you have to be committed to actually maintaining the use of those skills in all fields.
That's interesting.
The tendency of people is to fall back into the...
I would have assumed that the brain, at least like good brains, like they can logically already kind of like be good at figuring out the truth of things.
That's our natural brain's construction, and that leads to all kinds of false beliefs.
Yeah. I'm wondering in that question, just...
I watched today at the gym, I watched such a good video. This is like Mythvision's backup channel, and he posts a bunch of old stuff, but a lot of good content. Thank you, Garrett.
Said $5. I learned in my gender studies classes that mantra is a sexist person trait.
Mantra. Was that a joke? Was that a joke, Garrett? Anyway, I watched a really cool video that they did about the Dark Ages and about how Christianity was so like anti-reason and technology, and how they set us back 1,000 years, and how advanced and scientific the Romans were until Christianity took over and then put us in a Dark Ages.
Getting your thoughts. If myths carry something that truth doesn't typically, there's a false sense of completeness, of wholeness from telling a story. Something psychological there within a narrative, even if it's a lie.
One thing that's good that's happened in the last like 100, 200 years, and Dr. Flynn, who wrote about the Flynn effect, which is the rising IQs that have been happening in the last 100, 150 years, is that we have transitioned from a myth-based...
Damn, IQs are rising in the last 150 years? How dumb did people used to be? Because everybody... It feels like idiocracy. In fact, the way he was describing... the Roman Empire being taken over by Christianity, and then there was like an intellectual brain drain, scientific drain, and like idiocracy. They went through an idiocracy where literacy and writing and technology and everything went down pretty much.
Culture to a fiction-based culture. So we readily consume fiction and are completely comfortable with the fact that it's fiction, right? So books, comics, movies, television shows, and things like that. So people will use like episodes of Star Trek or the movie Apocalypse Now to...
Oh, Garrett says, I learned in my gender studies classes that mantra is a sexist term. Persontra, please. Dude, that sounds like a true story. Is that a joke, or is that just a true story, Garrett? You've been waiting forever to make your mantra joke that you heard in gender studies class?
I knew it was a joke, Mikas. I just didn't get it right away.
Or did you just come up with that on the fly? We got a comedian over here, guys.
speak truths about the world, like these movies, when they're good and they're well done, they do say true things, and you can use them as allegories or as examples to illustrate certain points that are true in the world. And we do this all the time, but we're comfortable doing it, admitting that, oh yeah, that episode of Star Trek is fiction, but I think like the message of it is still true, right? And that's still empirically defensible, right? That aspect of it, and that's what myth used to do. But what it used to be was that people get really
we're not talking much about hallucination and Peter.
literal money was being, horribles were largely true, and the fabrication of evidence, you get specious argumentation and things like this. Today, like the idea of religious mythology is kind of in the decline, whereas political mythology is on the rise, and that's where we are, I think. But overall, I think.
Okay, that's weak. Did Paul know nothing about Jesus? Robert Price. I can't handle too much Robert Price. Not a fan of the book I read of his either. His writing style, his speaking style. It's like he knows a lot, but he just like isn't good to listen to.
Did Jesus exist with Dr. Robert M. Price?
This is old.
One of the biggest, I guess, mysteries we find in the Pauline epistle.
Thank you, Ten Toes. I stay grounded.
Big Swag Fella sent $0 on brains evolved not for truth seeking but for believing in fictions can often be useful for survival.
Well, I've heard the explanation about pattern recognition, whereas like you see patterns. That was like a survival thing. If you see some kind of pattern, it helps you survive. Yeah, this is Mythvision's backup channel. He's always posting old stuff, which I don't mind. Maybe there was some gold that he posted a long time ago that I missed.
If those who take the 7 as authentic, and
I checked, he's getting more views, like way more views on his videos on his backup channel than his main channel with 300,000 subs. His backup has 60,000, way more views. Algorithms doing better.
Others, as possibly pseudo Paul or something, is that Paul never quotes Jesus for words that Jesus himself says. There's no quotes from the Gospels that we have, that supposed sayings of Jesus himself. Doesn't that work in line with mythicism? And what does that say about who Paul's Jesus was? Or can we delve into this topic? Why doesn't he just quote him?
Just made it up.
Just made it not a true. However, it is a true story that Israelis are drinking themselves to death from having to stay in bunkers, so I call it the
bunkers. They're in bunkers? Oh, from the missiles. Have they been in bunkers a lot recently? I did see something about that. They're on the regular, alarms going off and going in the bunkers.
Yeah, wouldn't you think that would be the way to settle things? Well, Corinthians, there's your view, and then there's the opinion of the Son of God. I mean, that would kind of settle it, I should think. But does he ever quote Jesus? There's a couple of places where people say that he does, with attribution. I mean, let's leave it at that for a second. This I say to you by the word of the Lord. I think it's one of the Thessalonians, I forget. And the Lord himself will descend with the shout of the trumpet.
Garrett has the mind of a... as a woke person, he's like, ooh, mantra. That sounds sexist.
The archangel and this and that and the other thing. Actually, if you read my book, The Paperback Apocalypse, I deal with this. It's not clear that he means the Lord Jesus, because I reproduce a lengthy passage from one of the prophets of the Old Testament, of which the Pauline text appears to be a kind of a précis, a condensation, just picking out certain phrases he wants to emphasize, like we would do with the ellipse dots. And so you really have to wonder, is he talking about the Lord Jesus or the Lord Jehovah? And I think it's a pretty good case that this is not my original observation, but I think that really is off the table there. The one people like is in the best to quote is in 1 Corinthians 7, where he says, he's talking about divorce, and he says, I say, not the Lord.
I love the old man, big belly, resting the hands, clasping the hands on the big belly. That's somebody you should listen to. Some big old eyebrows. Somebody who's seen some things.
But about this, I have no saying from the Lord, but I give my judgment as one who is deemed worthy. And if the man divorces his wife, etc., well, okay, where did he get this from the Lord? Is it a quoted source? Is it something Jesus said? Or is it something he's saying now? You cannot cavalierly dismiss the latter when you read something like the 7 letters to the churches in the book of Revelation, where the Son of God, whose eyes are as a flame of fire, says to the church at Laodicea and all that. And I just don't see how that is not at least as likely. That, I mean, what is Paul talking about?
See what I'm saying, dude?
1 Corinthians 12 through 14, when you come together, one has a word of wisdom, one has a word of knowledge, you prophesy. From whom? I mean, it's hilarious to see people try to explain this in some other way. Like Calvin said, I believe, that prophesying, well, that just means preaching the gospel. No, it doesn't. Come on, stop twisting the text. It must be the word of the Lord from the heavenly Christ. And then he says that...
Yeah. When they say prophesying, Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. That is what it means. Receiving it from the Holy Spirit through the scriptures and visions.
Okay, this I say, okay, he says, this I say, not the Lord. But then he says, this I say by the word of the Lord. If you take a look at the context, when he's saying, okay, I don't have a command of the Lord, but I think I'm trustworthy, he's dealing with an ambiguous issue. It's not clear cut, and that's why he says I have to give you my best thought about it. Whereas the other one, it's pretty darn clear, and so he can speak with Christ's authority, and he probably got it from the man upstairs, just like in Galatians. I didn't get my gospel from anybody, nor was I taught it. It came as a revelation from the Lord. I don't see. And then later on, if this is an integral part of the text, what does he say at the end of chapter 14? If anybody considers himself a prophet, let him recognize that what I am writing is a command of the Lord. That kind of erases the possibility that, I remember Jesus, when he was at Caesarea Philippi, once said, there's no statement like that. Now you can look at Romans chapter 12, which is filled with nifty sayings like, do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. And it sounds kind of like stuff you would hear in the Sermon on the Mount, though you don't, but it sounds similar. Why doesn't he say, Jesus said? You'd think that would settle the issue. Why? And this is of a piece with the fact that he never mentions Jesus having performed any miracles. He doesn't talk about Jesus being a teacher. When he talks about the crucifixion of Jesus, it's spooky. He says, if whoever wrote Colossians says that he was done in by the principalities and powers. And in 1 Corinthians, the archons of this age crucified him, though they wouldn't have done it had they realized what they were doing. They're signing their own death warrants. The archons of this age, the rulers of this age, could that be Herod and Pilate and all that? Well, yeah, it could, because they did have the belief that the fallen angels were the powers behind the thrones of the nations. Could be, but why does he skip over saying that? Why does he just say that the powers crucified him themselves? Because if they did, then you're talking about the heavenly Christ, how the sacrifice that saves and gave life to the world was like that of Purusha in the Rig Veda. When his body, which he allowed to be severed and dismembered, it became all...
Okay. This doc looks pretty good. Let's see.
If you've ever debated a Christian apologist claiming that...
Most Gorilla, thank you.
$10 loving the late night. Thank you.
Yeah, this is what I would be doing if I wasn't streaming, probably. Just watching stuff. I don't ever watch... I shouldn't say ever, but I don't watch entertainment movies or TV shows or video games. It's always something related to work or learning.
Jesus was the Messiah and the Son of God. You've probably encountered a claim like this.
Super.
The Old Testament, written over a 1,000-year period, contains nearly 300 references to the coming Messiah, and all of these were fulfilled in Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah,
During
that's
Jesus'
right.
lifetime.
The Lucas Gage with the Jews interview is out. I saw a clip of that. Before we get started on this, too, I saw everyone will bow to Rabbi Yeshua. Preach it, sister.
Yes, there are two groups that Jesus Christ is going to come back. The Muslims will bow down. All the Buddhists will bow down. The Christians will bow down. All the atheists will bow down. Everybody who thinks that they do not believe will bow down. Because in the eyes of God, there are two groups. There are no Muslims. There are no Christians. There are no Krishna. There are no atheists. There are two groups. Are you saved or are you unsaved? That Jesus Christ is going to come back.
Why does it look like she's in a European country?
All the Buddhists will bow down.
Shilling that telling all the people in the whatever European country she's gone to that they're going to bow down to the King of the Jews. This is what rabbis want. This is what Christians want. Bow down, bow down. Bow down to the God of Israel.
The Krishna will bow down. All the angels will bow down.
Forget about it.
Time, he fulfilled more than 300 prophecies, and he fulfilled them literally down to the smallest detail.
After careful examination of the first coming prophecies of Messiah, it is undeniably clear that Jesus of Nazareth fulfilled them all.
All the intricate details of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. All of those details were foretold by prophets centuries before Jesus was born.
Things like these are all just con artists, like magicians, selling you this stupid idea that magical Jews were prophets and predicted the future events to the T, and not just that some Jews wrote a story fulfilling prophecies.
In Jerusalem on a donkey, he'd be betrayed by a friend, he'd be born in Bethlehem, he'd be called out of Egypt, he would be sold for 30 pieces of silver, he'd be crucified. And you know Jesus fulfilled all 300 of those predictions?
How could one man fulfill all of these prophecies unless he was the Son of God, he was predestined to?
How could anybody possibly explain it?
One easy response to these claims could be to say, well, Jesus didn't exist at all. He was a fictional character, so of course he fulfilled prophecies because the gospel writers made up his biography using the Old Testament. Some scholars, like Dr. Richard Carrier, have made compelling arguments that Jesus of Nazareth did not exist as a historical figure. If that's true, then the whole Christian argument from fulfilled prophecy goes out the window. However, most scholars, including atheist scholars like Bart Ehrman and those outside of New Testament studies, Francesca Stavrakopoulou, agree that there was a historical Jesus of Nazareth, but regard the stories about him performing miracles and raising from the dead to be myths.
No, Jesus, most scholars would agree that he existed, yeah.
If we assume Jesus did exist...
Most Christian scholars would agree. Dude, they went from like total European Jesus to Semitic Jesus.
Details of his life, his place of birth, his childhood, his baptism, his ministry, his arrest.
Yeah, it's always... Oh, do most scholars agree? You mean like all the Christians, all the lifelong Christians trained at Christian schools? That's what they're asking. They never say like, how do we know he existed? Because if they get into the details, they're trash. Yeah, most Christian scholars.
And his crucifixion? Do any of these actually fulfill Old Testament prophecies? That is the question we will be diving into today.
Shall come forth, for he promises to send the Messiah. From the ancient. He is born out
I actually remember this when he first came out. Targum Jonathan Ben Uzziel?
Hey, real quick, I want to give a special shout out to the Queen of Mythvision, my partner, Ryan Lambert. She actually...
Christian apologists find most compelling and normally bring up in debates. Usually the lists of prophecies Christians come up with start with a whole bunch of predictions about the Messiah's ancestry. For example, they say the Old Testament writers predicted the Messiah would be a descendant of Abraham, and a descendant of Isaac, and a descendant of Jacob, and of the tribe of Judah, and of the line of David. Then they count these as 5 distinct prophecies about Jesus' ancestry and lineage. This is pretty silly and a little dishonest if you think about it. Being a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc. just means the Messiah was supposed to be a Jew. Is it really that surprising that the Jewish Messiah predicted by the Jewish prophets was supposed to be Jewish? Not only that, but if Jesus was a descendant of David, then by definition, he would also be from the tribe of Judah, since David was from the tribe of Judah. And if he was from the tribe of Judah, then by definition, he would also be a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So these 5 prophecies are actually just one prophecy that the Messiah would be a descendant of David. This isn't even bringing in critical scholarship who thinks that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob probably never existed to begin with.
So they're padding the stats, counting all these different things that are ultimately saying the same thing and would mean the same thing for their 300 prophecies.
Davidic ancestry. There is no question that the Old Testament predicts the Messiah would be a descendant of David. But did Jesus really fulfill this prophecy? The Gospels of Matthew and Luke base their claim of Jesus' Davidic ancestry on 2 lists of genealogies provided at the beginning of their Gospels. However, both lists completely contradict each other, making it doubtful that either one is true. In his book, The Birth of the Messiah, Raymond E. Brown explains where the genealogical lists in Matthew and Luke probably came from. Matthew's list of names for the post-exilic period is too short to cover the span of time, and neither his names nor those of Luke's longer list coincide with the descendants of Zerubbabel listed in the Old Testament. Even if there were official genealogies of the royal house of David in the post-exilic period, there is nothing to support.
That's crazy. So the ancestries in Matthew and Luke contradict each other, and then they also conflict
Big
with
Swag Fella sent $0 on the
ancestry
Julius
of the
Jew
Old
Jew,
Testament,
as prophesied by the Jew book.
Yeah, exactly.
The thesis that Matthew drew upon one.
Yeah, like the actual like Jewish Christian scholarship world and religious world, like there is no question at all that Jesus is Jewish. Only the powerless schizo, anon, and grifter e-crusaders on the internet would even attempt to try to suggest that Jesus is not Jewish.
It is far more plausible to assume that, at most, he may echo a popular genealogy of the royal lineage that circulated in Greek-speaking Jewish circles as part of their speculations about the coming of the Messiah. Such a popular tradition would have been subject to changes, losses, inaccuracies, and vagaries of the imagination. What one may say with surety of Luke's list is that, in part, it is artificially arranged in numerical patterns of 7, and that it contains enough inaccuracies and confusions to suggest a popular provenance, rather than an archival provenance, among Greek-speaking Jews. While the 2 New Testament genealogies tell us how to evaluate Jesus, they tell us nothing certain about his grandparents or his great-grandparents. Since there is no sound historical basis for accepting Jesus' royal lineage as factual, the Christian claim that Jesus fulfilled the requirement for the Messiah to be a descendant of David is probably Christian propaganda, as M. David Litwell writes. Tracing Jesus' line through King David was a bolder claim. Historically speaking, however, Matthew's claim is as little justified as Aeneas being the descendant of King Dardanus, or Julius Caesar being the descendant of King Ancus Marcius. Jesus' Davidic ancestry is a mythic claim with a culturally specific meaning for Jews and proselytes, except the rightful king. In the Gospel of Matthew, we get several claims that Jesus fulfilled 5 Old Testament prophecies by his birth and childhood alone. Matthew 1:23 states that Jesus being born of a virgin fulfilled Isaiah 7:14. Matthew 2:6 states that Jesus being born in Bethlehem fulfills Micah 5:2. Matthew 2:15 claims that Jesus being brought to Egypt fulfills Hosea 11:1. And Matthew 2:18 claims Herod's massacre of children fulfills Jeremiah 31:15. In Matthew 2:23 it says Jesus being raised in Nazareth is also a fulfillment of prophecy, but he doesn't say which prophet predicted this, and he doesn't quote any passage from the Old Testament. Most Christians assume Matthew is referring to Isaiah 11:1, but that verse also doesn't mention Nazareth, or say the Messiah will be a Nazarene. All it says is that the Messiah will be a branch from the stump of Jesse, and the Hebrew word for branch is netzer, which sounds a little bit like Nazareth. Needless to say, claiming this is a prediction of the Messiah's hometown is quite a stretch. Now, let's go through the rest of these Old Testament passages, see if any of them actually make the predictions that Matthew claims they make. First of all, Isaiah 7:14 says,
Behold, a virgin shall bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel.
At first glance, there's a big problem with this prophecy. The claim that Jesus' mother got miraculously impregnated by the Holy Spirit while she was a virgin cannot be proven historically. Hayatzer. The Aramaic and the Syriac version were apparently translated from the original wording treasury, which was later miscopied as Potter into the standard Hebrew. Since Potter may not say what Christians claim it says, and Matthew has to completely change the wording in order to make it fit his narrative. Second, the context of the verse shows that it's not a prophecy. It has nothing to do with betrayal or blood money. It says nothing about a potter or a potter's field, and it says nothing about the Messiah. Third, it's unlikely that Judas was paid such a small amount to betray Jesus, or that any of the disciples of Jesus could have acquired such specific information about the blood money. The most popular Old Testament passages Christian
the 30 shekels of silver would be like barely anything. Selling out the Son of God for such little money? No, it was such little money because it's never happened and it was ripped from the Old Testament, from Zechariah. That's why.
Apologists claim are prophecies of Jesus are those that are interpreted as descriptions of his suffering and death. I am, of course, referring to Psalm 22, Daniel 9, Zechariah 12, and Isaiah 53. The first one, Psalm 22, is a poem watered down wine vinegar while he was on the cross. Neither of these really fulfills Psalm 69:21. The psalmist describes his enemies giving him vinegar to insult or harm him in the same way they tried to poison his food. Neither drink the soldiers offered Jesus was harmful. The wine mixed with myrrh was actually a high-quality drink that also functioned as a mild anesthetic. The wine vinegar was a cheap beverage that soldiers normally drank. Jesus refused the first drink, the myrrh-infused wine, but only because he didn't want anything to ease his suffering, not because there was something wrong with the drink itself. The second drink was given to Jesus to quench his thirst. The original Hebrew of Psalms 69:21 uses the word rush to describe the food the psalmist's enemies give him. The word almost always means poison or venom. In one verse, it refers to a poisonous herb, probably hemlock. However, in 2 verses from Lamentations, it simply means bitterness. The Septuagint renders rosh with the Greek word koli, which is usually translated dal, and often refers to any kind of bitter herb, including wormwood and myrrh. The Gospel of Matthew, which puts the most effort into making these drinks fulfill Psalm 69:21, takes advantage of the Septuagint wording by replacing the wine mixed with myrrh in Mark 15:23 with wine mixed with gall, using the ambiguous Septuagint word that can include bitter herbs like myrrh. Basically, they gave me poison for food turned into they gave me gall for food, which then turned into they put myrrh in my drink. The myrrh wine and sour wine Jesus received from the soldiers did not fulfill Psalm 69:21. It fulfilled a very loose exegesis of a mistranslation of Psalm 69:21. 70 weeks timeline, Daniel 9.
Yeah,
the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel 9 is another Old Testament passage that Christian apologists regard.
See what he says about suffering.
But if you really break down and dissect the passage, it becomes clear that the descriptions of the servant that sound most like Jesus are theological claims that are not historically verifiable. For instance, lines like, "He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. With his wounds we are healed. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all, and he will make many to be accounted righteous," are all religious doctrines about the spiritual significance of this figure's suffering that could be applied to other figures, not just Jesus. For instance, ancient Jewish rabbinic literature identifies the servant with a range of figures, including Moses, Phineas, Jeremiah, and Rabbi Akiva. The Apostle Paul, who wrote decades before any of the gospel writers, actually identifies himself as the suffering servant. "For I will not venture to speak of anything except that Christ has accomplished through me to bring the Gentiles to obedience. And thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation. But as it is written, those who have never been told of him will see, and those who have never heard will understand." The typical Jewish interpretation of Isaiah 53 is that it refers to the nation of Israel during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BCE.
Paul said he was talking.
This identification is supported by many other verses in the chapters preceding Isaiah 53, which explicitly call the servant Israel. According to this interpretation, the Jewish people bore the sins of the Gentile nations through their persecution and exile, and they brought healing to these Gentiles by showing them who the one true God is. In the book of Daniel, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar and the Persian king Darius come to believe in the God of Israel because of the unshakable faith of Daniel and his companions. Like the suffering servant, these righteous Jews remain faithful and obedient to God, even when threatened with death. If we ignore the theological claims about vicarious atonement in Isaiah 53 and focus just on the historically verifiable descriptions of the servant, there really isn't anything in that passage which points exclusively to Jesus.
He's doing all these arguments like tailored for Christians, granting that there was a figure where might have died or something. Because it's like we know that they just created the story with Midrash, so like trying to go through and be like, well, he didn't quite exactly fulfill that thing. It's like
states is that the servant has had a humble origin, was despised and persecuted, was punished with the guilty even though he was innocent, was cut off out of the land of the living, and was rewarded with a long life and children. All these descriptions could apply to hundreds of Jewish individuals from the exile, or to the entire group of righteous Jews personified as a servant. If we had to pick one biblical figure who best fits the description of the suffering servant, a good choice would probably be Jeremiah, who suffered tremendous persecution throughout his life. Jeremiah had a humble beginning, giving up his priestly heritage to become a prophet. He was despised and rejected by his own people. Zeal, a first-century Jewish text which is basically a paraphrase of Isaiah 53. These apologists claim that this is the oldest Jewish interpretation of Isaiah 53, and that it supports the identification of the servant as the Messiah. Therefore, the Messianic interpretation is the earliest attested interpretation, and the Jewish and secular interpretations are later reinterpretations that should be dismissed. Let's briefly look at the Targum and compare this text with Isaiah 53. The first verse in the suffering servant passage reads, "Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up, and shall be exalted." The Targum of Jonathan paraphrases it as, "Behold, my servant Messiah shall prosper. He shall be high and increase and be exceedingly strong, as the house of Israel looked to him during many days." This seems like a pretty straightforward interpretation until you read a little further. Isaiah 52:14, "As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind." The Targum paraphrases that as, "Because their countenance was darkened among the peoples, and their complexion beyond the sons of men." Clearly there is more going on here than a simple messianic interpretation. The Targum has identified the figure whose appearance was marred as a collective, not an individual. Let's keep reading. "Then he will be despised, and will cut off the glory of all the kingdoms. They will be prostrate and mourning, like a man of pains, and like one destined for sickness. And as though the presence of the Shekinah had been withdrawn from us, they will be despised and esteemed not." The one suffering here is not the Messiah, but all the kingdoms who despised the Messiah. The Targum has completely changed Isaiah 53 so that the servant no longer suffers, but actually causes his enemies, the Gentiles, to suffer for opposing him. Even the well-known and often quoted line, "He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted," is changed to, "Then for our sins he will pray, and our iniquities will for his sake be forgiven, although we were accounted stricken, smitten from before the Lord, and afflicted." The vicarious suffering for the sins of others is completely gone. So the Targum of Jonathan is not nearly as big of a checkmate as apologists think it is. In fact, we actually have a trump card of our own that's even bigger, despite what apologists typically claim. It turns out that this Targum is not the oldest Jewish interpretation of Isaiah 53. There is an older text called the Wisdom of Solomon, which was composed at least half a century earlier than the Targum of Jonathan. In the second and third chapters of this book, the author describes the suffering of righteous Jews at the hands of the wicked who despise them for their righteousness and piety. Wisdom of Solomon 2:20. Let us test him with insult and torture, so that we may find out how reasonable he is, and make trial for his forbearance. Let us condemn him to a shameful death, for according to what he says, he will be protected. In the eyes of the foolish they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be a disaster, and their going from us to be their destruction, but they are at peace. For though in the sight of others they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. Having been disciplined a little, they will receive great good, because God tested them and found them worthy of himself. Like gold in the furnace, he tried them, and like a sacrificial burnt offering, he accepted them. In the time of their visitation, they will shine forth and will run like sparks through the stubble. The connection between Wisdom 2-3 and Isaiah 53 is widely acknowledged by biblical scholars. Christopher R. North writes that the writer of the Wisdom of Solomon was familiar with Isaiah 40-66 needs no proof, and his description of the sufferings of the righteous man in verses 1-7 reads like a paraphrase of Isaiah 52.
I've heard Carrier mention this before, that they say that Wisdom of Solomon is riffing off Isaiah 53. It's like it's more of a fan fiction. It's expanding the lore of Isaiah 53, the suffering servant. The suffering servant in Deutero-Isaiah. I remember looking at that source.
And Isaiah 53. Joseph Blenkinsop agrees. We are probably justified in picking up echoes of the last servant's song, in this account, especially since the righteous sufferer calls himself the servant of the Lord. David Winston writes, the description of the suffering and vindication of the child of the Lord in verse 13 is based on the fourth servant's song in Isaiah. Addison G. Wright says, the picture of the just here, and in 3:1-9 is based on the fourth servant's song.
Wow, nice citations here. 1:15:20. This is a checkmate to the apologists.
Is based on the fourth servant's.
Dude, I'm so happy I watched this just for this, just to see all these proofs and citations here. I believed it when I heard it, that Wisdom of Solomon 2 is about Isaiah 53, but never seen this. Suffering and vindication of the child of the Lord is based on the
song in Isaiah. Addison G. Wright says, the picture of the just here, and in 3:1-9 is based on the fourth servant's song. This is not, however, our trump card. There is one more Jewish text even older than Wisdom of Solomon, which contains the actual oldest interpretation of Isaiah 53 in existence. This text is none other than the book of Daniel itself. Most people don't know this, but there's actually an allusion to Isaiah 53 in the last chapter of Daniel. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. In the original Hebrew, the word for those who are wise is maskalim. These are the heroes of the book of Daniel, the faithful Jews who were persecuted during their exile, but remained faithful to God. In Daniel 12:3, the author describes the glorious vindication of these maskalim by taking words directly from the suffering servant passage in Isaiah. In Isaiah 52:13, the servant is described as yaskil, wise, the root word for maskalim. In Isaiah 53:11, it says the servant will make many to be accounted righteous, and these exact words are mirrored in Daniel 12:3. In 1953, Harold Lewis Ginsburg wrote, undoubtedly, our author has identified the meaning of Isaiah 52 verse 13 through 53 verse 12 with the masses in the time of the Antiochian religious persecution, and the servant with the minority of steadfast anti-Hellenizers. This conclusion is supported by John J. Collins, who states, H.L. Ginsburg has shown that the heroes of the book, the maskalim, wise teachers, are modeled on the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. Richard J. Clifford states, Daniel 11:33-12:10 has been called the earliest interpretation of the fourth servant song. It interprets the Jewish loyalists of the Antiochian period in the 2nd century BCE as the servant of 52:13-53:12. Michael A. Knibb also mentions the application of the fourth servant song to the group described in Daniel 12:3 as the wise and as those who led many to righteousness through the allusion of Isaiah 53:11 and Isaiah 52:12. Let me say this again. The author of the book of Daniel, who Christian apologists believe was inspired by God, agrees with the collective interpretation of Isaiah 53. For Daniel, the suffering servant is not the Messiah, but the righteous Jews who remain steadfast in spite of persecution. So, Christians, who is the suffering servant? It's not the Messiah. It's not Jesus. It's the Jewish people who remained faithful to God. According to the divinely inspired prophet Daniel himself, this is the correct interpretation of Isaiah 53. Checkmate. Case closed. Mic drop. If you disagree with this interpretation,
so Jews lied claiming that Jesus fulfilled Isaiah 53.
Disagreeing with the prophet Daniel, who you believe was inspired by God. That concludes our video today. All of the best, most compelling, most popular Old Testament passages.
They twisted the truth of what the suffering servant was and claimed it was the Messiah. And it wasn't supposed to be. Okay, here's that John J. Collins. Apocalyptic Judaism created Christianity? I agree with that. Messianic apocalyptic Judaism. Ascension, mystical, apocalyptic Judaism. Let's hear.
Gentlemen, you know.
Oh, wait, before that, actually, look at this. This is what I found today. Christians are default flat earthers. Jesus was a flat earther. If Jesus existed, he probably would have been a flat earther, to be honest, because only the Aryan Greeks had figured it out by then.
Got the 10
that we're on a sphere.
People
3,000 likes for this, by the way. This is your brain on the Bible.
People be like, "You're a flat earther?" No, I'm a Christian, actually. All Christians are by default flat earthers. Jesus was a flat earther. Moses was a flat earther. Moses knew exactly what he was writing in Genesis 1 when it was revealed to him by God. Just as he was revealed the 10...
Yeah, dude, Moses really revealed the Torah by God, bro. I totally believe the Jews when they say that.
Commandments. Do you think God got the 10 Commandments wrong? Do you think God didn't know his own creation? Do you think God used specific words to confuse us? Hebrew, intricate, deep words with specific meanings. If he wanted to use a different word,
neck tattoo, check,
to describe his creation as it should be, he would have used that word, but he didn't.
Biblical cosmology. Hey, bro, you ever read the Bible on weed? Torah is the blueprint for flat Earth. Okay, let's hear this. Apocalypse.
Oh, I'm excited. Fotla is the Holmes Professor of the Old Testament criticism and interpretation at Yale Divinity School, and has served as president of both the Society of Biblical Literature and the Catholic Biblical Association.
Oh, he's
His
Catholic.
many other books include Apocalypse, Prophecy, Pseudepigraphy, Beyond the Qumran Community, and the Erdmann's Dictionary of Early Judaism. He has a bachelor's and master's at the University of College Dublin, a PhD at Harvard University, and an honorary degree at the University of College Dublin, as well as an honorary degree from the University of Zurich. Welcome to Mythvision Podcast.
Dude, he has like he served as the president of the Catholic Biblical Association of America. So if this guy gets polled, do you believe in a historical Jesus? What do you think he's going to say? Are you going to go, all the historians say, oh, he's a Catholic? What is he going to say? Jesus never existed? He's going to say the evidence for Jesus is trash and bunk? Of course not.
30 or 40 or 50, I can't even tell you how many books he's touched. He's also edited, he's co-authored, but of course you've also had books just by you. You guys go down in the description. There's an Amazon affiliate link there that helps like give me a kickback if you ever purchase anything through Amazon. And you get all his books, it helps me out. So I will be collecting super chats for questions toward the end. We only have a limited time before the end of all time happens with Dr.
He wrote
John.
The Scepter and the Star. Messianism in the Dead Sea Scrolls and Biblical Tradition, 1995. Messianic expectations evolved in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Remember, Jesus fulfilled the scepter and the star of Bethlehem. Messianic proof text that they were already connecting midrashically in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Anyway, let's go.
John J. Collins on the show. Welcome to the show. I'm shutting up now. Thank you for joining me. Seriously, I really appreciate it. Your book, The Apocalyptic Imagination, is one of the most widely praised studies of Jewish apocalyptic literature ever written. It has over 30 years, well over 30 years of his studies on this topic. He has a third edition out, which is this one. So if you go on there and you see this model right here, this is the one that has all the latest and greatest. There are other versions you can get, but you will be lacking a few things that aren't found in most contemporary ideas. And so I want to ask, to start us off, what is the apocalyptic genre? And is Ernst Käsemann's, I hope I'm saying that correct, dictum correct, that apocalypticism is really the mother of all Christian theology?
Well, let's start with what it is. So, an apocalypse...
Apocalypticism is the origin of all Christian theology, he says.
Literally is a revelation. Now, there are lots of kinds of revelations. What you get in an apocalypse typically is a mediated revelation. Usually, there's a mediating angel, and very often they take the form of a vision. There can be other ways of doing it, but often it's a vision that the angel then has to interpret for you, so emphasizing that it's very mysterious. And the other typical way is that you get transported to heaven or hell. And then usually you need an angel to show you around when you get there. So, it's revelation that is literally out of this world.
That's, but you know what I loved about your book? And for anyone who's wondering, this is literally just a surface level. Like he says, jump in the airplane and let me show you a satellite view of apocalyptic genre. You can get lost in this whole topic, but sometimes it's not all of the motifs are shared among the literature. And I guess one of the things we could talk about is,
hey, dude, I thought I had new good internet. What's with the OBS dropping? What's the deal? We had no drop frames, whatever. I won't complain.
Or an end of a civilization or a rule of the old covenant, but it wasn't a cosmological end of actual elements to planet Earth or those type of things. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, you see, there is a lot of symbolic language. Okay, take an example. The example people are most likely to be familiar with is the Book of Revelation. Now, you have a dragon falling from heaven. You have beasts coming up out of the sea. And, obviously, this is all symbolic. Now, some of it can be decoded and refer to things that we know happened. That's more obvious, I think, in the Book of Daniel, where there is the series of kingdoms represented as beasts coming up out of the sea and so forth. And then, it switches into the vision of the future. Now, there's still a good deal of symbolism in that. You have the destruction, say, of the Whore of Babylon. Now, the Whore of Babylon, stands for Rome, but it's also symbolic. And it's the thing about the symbolic.
And now they're calling America the new Babylon, symbolic of Rome being destroyed in the Christian, Jewish, mystical end times. Look at this other Christian I found, this cowboy Christian I found on TikTok. Have we ever heard this story before, guys?
Pull me out of those bags. Let's go ahead and get this straight right now. If you're mad that I follow Jesus and Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I talk about that, go ahead and unfollow me now. I used to rob people at gunpoint. I've done the whole drug thing. I've done all the bad things in the world. Jesus was the only one that could pull me out of those bad times. My mama tried, didn't work. My friends tried, didn't work. Jesus was the only one that could pull me out of those bad times. And he's also the only one that gives me ability to not fear death. I don't care if you get mad at me or not. I'm going to talk about him because he's done a lot for me. Let's go ahead.
Now you're not going to be scared of death? I'm scared of dying, and I want to live forever in heaven. 205,000 likes on Instagram, guys.
Get this straight right now. If you're mad
if
that
you don't like me talking about Rabbi Jesus, well, I used to rob people at gunpoint. So you want me doing that shit again? Have we heard this story before? Dude, how many Christians just got bad tattoos on their necks and their faces and did terrible things? And that's why they need Jesus. Maybe it's a better world if criminals like this do have Jesus and are really scared of going to hell so they don't do bad things. The case can be made. My Lord and Savior has done a lot for me, so don't you be calling me no crash cook in my replies.
Follow Jesus and Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I talk about that, go ahead and unfollow me now. I used to rob people at gunpoint. I've done the whole drug thing. I've done all the bad things in the world. Jesus was the...
If without believing in a magical Jewish superhero, you do really bad stuff. See, that's why it's so alluring to believe in Jesus. Jesus dropped the charges. He found Jesus in prison after he robbed somebody at gunpoint, and now It's so often the case, some story like this with Christian. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to pick on the dude, but it's just, is it not always the case, something like that? Jesus always works.
Languages, you can reuse it. You can reapply it to new situations. But then, you know, at the end of it, there is also a prediction of the second coming of Jesus from heaven. Now, and of the resurrection and a final judgment. And now, while there's a lot of symbolism in that too, I think they also expected that actually would happen.
So it didn't happen?
Of course not. If it did, would we be here talking?
You see how you answered that, Dr. Collins? I love that. And the reason why, and that's the expected answer, that group I was telling you about, full preterist, will say, what are you talking about? All it was supposed to end was the judgment of 70 AD on the Jerusalem temple. Haven't you read the Gospels, those days? But with your reading, what I find fascinating, to kind of give you something to bounce off here, you brought up the Book of Revelation, which is kind of the foundation where the genre is kind of based off of. It has such an impact historically that scholarship has said, look, if something looks similar to this, let's look at some literature that has similarities to this genre. And that's what your book shows. You bring up books I would have never even known the name to if it weren't for this book. There's just Dead Sea Scroll stuff. Also, by the way, I want to tell everybody, go on Audible. He only has one book right now on Audible, but you really got to go check it out. It's the Dead Sea Scroll book that takes you through, was the Qumran sect an Essene sect? Can you really say with absolute certainty that they were Essene? I mean, there's really ambiguity going on, and it's not that simple. So I just want to mention that. But this idea that, well, we're still here, that means that there was supposed to be an actual end to human civilization. Was that what was expected? And how do we know that that was what was expected?
Well, when people say something repeatedly, I think you've got to accept that they mean it. And the burden of proof is on somebody who wants to say they didn't mean it. Now, I mean, you can still interpret it symbolically, because you can say that whatever they meant by it, it didn't actually happen that way. And you can find other ways to use the language. But that's our adaptation of it. So, you know, there are different ways of reading texts. Now, if you're...
What's this, Beowulf?
I don't know if you know anything about my background, but I was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder when I was 18. So I'm technically a psychopath, and so I didn't have like a conscience, and so I would steal anything. It didn't matter, family, friends, I didn't care. I would steal things, but I was in Crete and I was hanging out with these Greek kids, and we went to and then I went over there during the summer to visit him. I don't know if you know anything about my background, but I was diagnosed with antisocial personality.
Oh yeah, top Christian apologist, an anti-Muslim crusader. Didn't he also like have some like underage sex charge, or he had some crazy charge that he went to prison for, I believe. What's his name? Woods? Something Woods, and now he's just big popular internet Christian with some crazy skeletons in the closet and baggage. But Jesus dropped the charges. Didn't he, Beowulf?
You're concerned about what the authors meant. That's one thing. If you're not concerned about what the authors meant, and just how you could use this language for your own purposes, well, that's another game. I tend to play the first one more.
That is really good.
They're meant to be acts of communication, and it is somebody trying to tell us something.
Wow.
And I think, you have, as you mentioned, there's a whole library of books from around the time of Christ, a couple of hundred years before and a couple of hundred years afterwards, that are full of
I got
this
something a little bit better than this guy, guys. When Carl Sagan ripped nutcase Dennis Prager's hypocrite beliefs. Let's see some classic Carl Sagan versus Dennis Prager.
Of a final blow up, a final judgment.
They weren't all talking about the same thing, though, or were they?
Well, broadly speaking, they were. But it's typical of this language that you can go over the same thing in different terms. So if you think of the book of Daniel, in Daniel's great vision in chapter 7,
I'm going to listen a little more to this. I'm already kind of over it, though, so we're going to switch. This is kind of my when I'm by myself and I'm watching things. I'm sure you guys do it, too, but this is kind of my ADD brain.
Beasts were coming up out of the sea. Okay, and then one like the Son of Man comes on the clouds of heaven, and then the beasts are thrown into the fire and so forth. That's one way. Then you go on to the next chapter, he has another vision, and it involves a ram and a he-goat charging. And then, in this case, the goat grows a little horn. Now, in a way, they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, he hit his
in
dad
both
with
cases,
a
they're
hammer.
talking about the rise of the Greek Empire, but you can do it differently, and you can, bring changes on it. And then later on in the book again, you get a much plainer prediction. He doesn't name names, but it's easy enough to identify them, of things that happened after Alexander the Great, down to the persecution of the Jews by Antiochus Epiphanes in the 13th century.
I want to hear about apocalyptic
of these manuscripts that actually seem
Judaism
to
creating
come
Christianity.
time being prolonged. But the fourth Sibylline oracle has Assyria as the first one, which is interesting. So it wasn't copying from Daniel, being myths. So I think, there was a lot more intellectual ferment in the middle of the 2nd century than people had been inclined to believe.
Interesting. Dr. Collins, you wrote David Hellholm has proposed a definition of apocalypse in Samia 14. I hope I said that correctly.
No, is that?
It's the time to show you, of course, in the Hebrew or the Hebrew scriptures, the Septuagint, that hey, this is what it's looking like, and Paul's probably grabbing from that. So I appreciate you taking the time. You spelled that out really, really nicely too. You
And Enoch is out of this world, but many people will join them.
But we're gonna have to let Professor Collins go because he's got to recover from this long discussion, and he's got a plan for my visit. I'm gonna.
All right.
In the universe after he made it. Why didn't he make it right in the first place so it would go in the direction he wanted?
Because there would be no need for us then. If the world were perfect, then we could not exist because we could have no freedom of choice to do bad. We couldn't choose anything imperfect.
This is a very egocentric point of view. That the point of the world is so that we will do good or bad.
That's right.
Now, let me tell you a
Without
fact.
humanity, I don't think there's a point of view. You are the best known astronomer in the world, but I was just thinking, who's the second best known astronomer in the world? It is true, but it's not. It's a funny thing. It's like now the best known chemist. It's just you've just made something unique out of your life, truly, because astronomers are not well known.
Thank you. I never intended to do it. All I wanted to do was research to sort of immerse myself in the magnificence of the universe, and all this other stuff just sort of knocked on my door.
You will believe that there are people out there, don't you?
People, no chance. Because people are the result of a particular evolutionary pathway on the Earth that could not possibly recur elsewhere. Believe is a very, I'm sorry to catch you up on words.
No, I like that, that's fine.
Believe is a very strong matter for scientists. And belief in the absence of evidence maybe exists in religion, but it shouldn't exist in science.
Okay.
And since we do not have strong evidence for extraterrestrial life, I neither believe nor disbelieve. What I do say is that it's an extremely important question. We have the tools to find out. Let's look.
Why is it important?
It's important because, first of all, it characterizes who we are. For the longest time, people have thought that they were the center and point of the universe, the reason there is a universe. And that, of course, is connected with there not being anybody else.
Right.
If there is somebody else, then that...
we're not quite as important.
We're not quite as important, but there's other evidence that we're not quite as important.
You said that we were unique, that you laughed at the suggestion that there are people out there. Absolute unique sequence of events made human beings.
And every other animal and plant.
Okay, does that not argue for a God, for a design?
I can't imagine. Why? Would you say that the existence of a slime mold argues for God?
Yes.
Why would you say that?
Because the existence of something that is designed implies to me a designer.
You have not met Mr. Charles Darwin, I can tell.
I have met Mr. Darwin, and Mr. Darwin believed in God.
Mr. Darwin...
I asked him, he believed.
But he did not believe that the argument you presented holds water. What Mr. Darwin said is that the slime mold and humans and everybody else have evolved by a set of natural processes, and no hand of a creator is evident or needed. That's the whole point of evolution.
Where's this gone? In the old days, we used to have some smart scientists like wrecking Zionists and Bible believers like Dennis Prager, or Christopher Hitchens like embarrassing Rabbi Shmuley, calling out like, you believe in a bunch of stupid fairy tales, supernatural, superstitious nonsense. Now it's like we're going in idiocracy and the Bible brains are taking over.
So you feel that the pancreas and the liver and the intestines and the brain arrange themselves by natural, pure, fluky chance?
A caricature.
Why? Why is it a caricature?
You're walking along the beach. You look down, there's something shiny. You pick it up. It's a pocket watch. You say, my goodness, look how beautifully this is put together. Look how well form matches function. Is it possible that the various gears and wheels fell together by accident? Ridiculous idea. A watchmaker means a watchmaker.
Right.
Now you go and you look at a
pancreas maker.
Right. And that's the step where you've made a mistake.
Why?
Because,
All right.
I'll tell you. Now let us look at the variety of dogs in the world. Okay? Ranging from, let's say, Dachshunds to Great Danes. Okay? Different forms, different functions, wildly different. How did they get to be so different? The answer is, humans made them different. I know you think this is still watchmaker, but wait a minute. Humans made them different by interfering with who mates with whom. You want a dog that goes into holes in the ground and ferrets out moles or something? Then make sure that this low-slung guy mates with that low-slung female, and probably you're going to get more low-slung dogs. Now, what you are doing is what Darwin called artificial selection. The imposing of restrictions on what kind of offspring they're going to be by an external force. And if humans, in a mere 10,000 years or so, can produce the entire variety of dogs, cannot nature, which reaches into the innards of organisms.
But nature doesn't have a brain.
Doesn't need a brain.
Okay, all right.
Having 4 billion years of biological evolution to create all the diversity and beauty in the natural world.
Having said all that, I will ask when we get back whether you do believe in God and what God means to you, because it's a question people like to ask scientists, especially Carl Sagan. We'll be back in a moment with that question.
The watchmaker argument sounds persuasive until you look at biology. A watch cannot reproduce, mutate, or pass traits to the next generation. Living organisms can. That is why natural selection matters. Science shows that organisms better suited to their environment are more likely to survive and pass on their traits, which causes species to change over time. Evolution explains complexity through a natural process, not pure random chance. That directly challenges the Bible's claim that animals and humans were specially created according to their kinds. The evidence points to life changing through natural causes, not a designer stepping in from outside nature.
Welcome back. With me is Carl Sagan, the world-renowned astronomer. I hasten to add that his new book is out, A Vision of the Human Future in Space, and it's called Pale Blue Dot, and I strongly recommend it. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but we were having a little debate here. You asked me, do I believe that the pancreas suggests to God, and I do.
And I asked you if the stone suggests to God.
Yes, and I said that not quite as much as the pancreas.
That's probably because you're not a stone. If you were a stone, you'd probably think it the other way around.
As you're from Brooklyn, as we established, there was a statement that we used to say then about those ifs. If my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a trolley car.
Or as people not in Brooklyn, or people not in Brooklyn say, if I had eggs, I'd have ham and eggs.
Yes, that's right. But right, all right. So therefore, the ifs. If I were a stone, I wouldn't be. I would. Well, on television, anything goes actually. But maybe if I were a stone, I would be here right now. Actually, sometimes I watch TV and I think I am watching a stone. Be that as it may, you look at all this. I have to ask you a question then. Sure. Are you atheist?
What do you mean by atheist?
One who believes that there is no God.
What do you mean by God?
I'll tell you exactly. A creator who, with intelligence, who is aware of his creation.
But there are religions that believe in no God of that sort, and still are religions.
I didn't ask you if you were religious. I know, I understand that.
This is a scientific question. Was the universe created, or was it always here? Mm-hmm. And the only way to answer this is through science. We don't have the answer yet.
We have a suggested answer. The Big Bang suggests that it wasn't always here.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. The Big Bang, here are 2 alternatives. Let me say the 3 possibilities, or 3 of the possibilities. One is that 10 or 15 billion years ago, or whatever it is, the universe was made from nothing.
Right.
Number 2, that 10 or 15 billion years ago, the latest in an infinite sequence of expansions and contractions of the universe occurred. Mm-hmm. Third possibility, that 15 billion years ago, our universe was created from nothing, one of an infinite number of universes that are spontaneously forming and destroying.
Right. Okay, now let me ask you something. Does the idea, I admit that the idea of God is mind-boggling, but do you not admit that the idea of infinity is more mind-boggling?
Not more.
There is no limit to the number of universes? What does that mean?
What does God mean? What does it mean to make something from nothing? It's mind-boggling either way. Let's admit it. Let's admit it.
So where do you think the evidence leads? You look at a baby born and you say, Mother Nature is amazing, or there might be a God. Which is your more spontaneous response?
Which is the more superficial and sentimental
Mother
answer?
Nature
Which is the deeper answer? There are a lot of questions.
The sentimental and deeper may be the same.
They may not be.
That's correct. I fully acknowledge that.
Sentimental
is my daughter come out of my wife's between her legs, and I thought, Yahweh must be real. This makes me think that prophecies and Jews were really have a covenant. Not even in the slightest.
Danger.
Sentimental
can lead you into other directions. But anyway, we don't decide on where the baby comes from by how it feels to have a baby. I've had 5, not in that sense, but
we understand.
In that sense, I've had 5, and I think it's great, and I never had for a moment the thought, God intervened to make this baby. Let me ask you a question about that, by the way.
But how about all the babies that die during childbirth? Is that God? Is that a blessing from God? Or the babies born with genetic mutations that cause them life of pain and suffering or death? Is that God? Is that also a blessing of God? Is your wife like screaming bloody murder in pain? That huge dome getting through the canal, the birth canal? Is that a blessing from God? Oh, is that a curse from Eve? Right. Wreck him, crush him,
and omniscient.
Yes.
Why is it necessary for God to be meddling in the universe after he made it? Why didn't he make it right in the first place so it would go in the direction he wanted?
Because there would be no need for us then. If the world were perfect, then we could not exist because we could have no freedom of choice to do bad. We couldn't choose anything imperfect.
This is a very egocentric point of view. That the point of the world is so that we will do good or bad.
That's right.
Now, let me tell you a
Without
fact.
humanity, I don't think there's a point of the universe.
Let me now argue about that.
To test if we really
A lot of
believe
people like that
magic
idea, right?
Jews
It's
in love.
satisfying. No, wait. Let me make a remark. It's satisfying. We're at the center. We're important.
Yeah, why do so many Christian couples have trouble with fertility exactly?
The reason the universe was made feels good, right? Now, let's think of where we are. We live on a tiny world in a solar system which has about 70 or 80 big worlds going around the sun, which is an obscure star in an obscure spiral arm of a humdrum galaxy that contains 400 billion stars, and this Milky Way galaxy is one of about 100 billion galaxies. Now imagine that number of places, and in this obscure galaxy, in that tiny star, that little planet, those guys think they're the center of the universe. It's hilarious.
It's not hilarious.
And the Jewish God is watching you masturbate and judging you and sending you to hell. And this is why they try to deny. They go, those Jews, those Satanists want you to think you're on a little rock floating through space, dude. No, we're on a flat Earth realm that's the center of the universe, geocentric, and Satanists are hiding that God created us and we're important and we live forever. Yeah. God creates billions of universes and galaxies, chooses the Jews. Yeah. Okay.
It just shows size isn't important. We'll be back in a minute with more on this.
My question is
My family? Yeah, I'm from Sirius, the star Sirius.
Things we don't know about yet. Things that Carl Sagan will tell us about.
Why is it that man is still not evolving into a more perfect race? Why does it seem like we're actually declining instead of inclining?
Au contraire, we are. Have you seen my kids? I don't know. Maybe your genetic line is not evolving into anything special.
You have to bear in mind, I don't understand why that question received applause. You have to bear in mind... People are pessimistic about humanity. Really, that is the reason, and it's sad. You have to bear in mind this time scale of evolution. The average lifetime of a mammalian species is a few million years. We live in our personal lives only a few decades. There's a discordance between what we see personally and what the history of our species are. And by the way, evolution is not always in an upward direction. Evolution goes in all sorts of directions, including species that become less fit and become extinct. Most species that have ever lived on Earth are now extinct. Extinction What is your answer? Rule. What is your answer to those who say we have so many needs on Earth, and specifically in our society, we shouldn't spend billions and billions on scientific research? I would say that there are short-term problems and there are long-term problems.
Who says that? Christians? We don't need to research. Science ain't important. We don't need to research nothing. We got the Bible. Who says that? What do you say to people that think that, like, science doesn't matter and we just need to worship Hashem and be Noahides? That's crazy. Do people actually say that?
Who say we have so many needs on Earth, and specifically in our society, we shouldn't spend billions and billions on scientific research. I would say that there are short-term problems and there are long-term problems. And if you eat the seed corn, you're just as dead as if you shot yourself. Fair enough. Yes, please.
Dr. Sagan, how would you explain the large markings in the fields, and do you think maybe those were caused by spaceships?
You're talking about crop circles.
Yeah.
This is well understood. Crop circles are a hoax. There were two guys in a pub in Wiltshire, in southern England, who said, I've had enough of this UFO stuff. Let's really show them up. Let's make a big circle in the wheat and see what happens. And what happened, let me spend just a second on this. What happened is, people said, oh, UFOs have landed. So then they thought, okay, this is too easy. Let's make something more complicated. And they did that. And then not only did people say UFOs have landed, they said, this is too complex for human beings ever to have made. This must be extraterrestrials for sure. And for 15 years, no one caught on. And then they confessed. And you see, you have heard about it being extraterrestrials. You never heard about the two guys who did it who confessed. And that says something about the way the media work. Hey, I just did a show on that. You're absolutely right.
Religion keeps trying to make humans the center of everything. That is the problem. Science gives us a much colder answer. Earth is one small planet around one ordinary star. Inside one galaxy.
It looks like there's a crop circle scene in that new Steven Spielberg Disclosure Day movie, which I plan on going to watch next week.
Among billions. NASA estimates the universe is about 13.8 billion years old, and science still does not claim to know what happened before the earliest moments of cosmic expansion. That honesty matters. Religion fills the unknown with God, then acts like the mystery has been solved. Christianity even places Earth, humans, sin, and salvation at the center of the story. But the scale of the universe makes that claim look more emotional than factual.
To this, I hate to read too much, but this is almost like they've been reading your book. This is from the New York Times for Friday, May 24. Americans flunk science, a study finds. Less than half of all American adults understand that the Earth orbits the sun yearly, according to a basic science survey. Nevertheless, there's enthusiasm for research, except in some fields like genetic engineering and nuclear power that are viewed with suspicion. Only about 25% of American adults get passing grades in a National Science Foundation survey of what people know about basic science and economics. I mean, this is singing your song, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly what I'm talking about in the demon-haunted world. My feeling, Charlie, is that it's not that pseudoscience and superstition and New Age so-called beliefs and fundamentalist zealotry are something new. They've been with us for as long as we've been human. But we live in an age based on science and technology with formidable technological powers.
Science and technology are propelling us forward at accelerating rates.
That's right. And if we don't understand it, and by we, I mean the general public, if it's something that, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't know anything about it, then who is making all the decisions about science and technology that are going to determine what kind of future our children live in?
Bible believers.
Some members of
Torah respecters.
Congress, but there's no more than a handful of members of Congress with any background in science at all. And the Republican Congress has just abolished its own Office of Technology Assessment, the organization that gave them bipartisan, competent advice on science and technology. They say, we don't want to know. Don't tell us about science.
Surprising, because Gingrich is genuinely interested, I think, in these kinds of things as a, out of his own intellectual curiosity. Does the president still have a science advisor?
He does. John Gibbons and the vice president.
Sagan would be rolling in his grave, and if he saw how popular Flat Earth was today online, and all the big charlatan grifters pushing it.
Is scientifically literate,
yes. Scientifically, a science maven. I mean, you blast them all. Creationists.
Pass the torch to Professor Dave.
Christian scientists who you say would rather allow their children to suffer than give them insulin or antibiotics. Astrologers come in for particular scorn on your part.
Well, I would say scorn, just derision.
A more generous version of scorn. But what's the danger of all this? I mean, this is not the thing that...
There's two kinds of dangers.
This has 300,000 views from 2 weeks ago, popular.
One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology, in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson lay great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
Jefferson was amazing in his devotion to science. We think of Jefferson as this man who was literate and who was a passionate articulator of freedom. But if you go to Monticello,
exactly,
what you appreciate is he was at heart a scientist, a botanist, an architect, geologist. And if you Meriwether Lewis, as we know from Stephen Ambrose, he wanted him to go out and do experimentations and explore and be skeptical and find answers to passages and explore the West.
Exactly right. And there was also an economic grail there if the Northwest Passage was found. Jefferson said that he was at heart a scientist, that he would have loved to have been a scientist. But there were certain events happening in America that called to him, and so he devoted his life to that kind of politics. Indeed. So that generations later, people could be scientists.
Yeah. Have we the point is made, and maybe by you, is it when's the last time I had a president who made a speech about science?
I say that.
It is this notion that
Donald Trump loves science.
Science is not of great interest to us in some sense. That somehow we don't want to learn.
You see, people read the stock market quotations and financial pages. Look how complex that is. And
because they know the direct connection to their own.
There's a motivation, but they're capable. Large numbers of people. People are able to look at sports statistics. Look how many people can do that. Understanding science is not more difficult than that. It doesn't involve greater intellectual activities. But the thing about science is, first of all, it's after the way the universe really is and not what makes us feel good. And a lot of the competing doctrines are after what feels good and not what's true.
Okay, but you got to make, I'm not sure you'll go this far with me, but I mean, there's a lot of that is about feeling good, and there's a lot of that that's about hocus pocus. But at the same time, millions of people who understand science does not prove religion, but because religion is faith-based. And therefore, you should not deny the value of it because it is faith-based and not scientific.
But let's look a little more deeply into that. What is faith? It is belief in the absence of evidence. Now, I don't propose to tell anybody what to believe, but for me, believing when there's no compelling evidence is a mistake. The idea is to withhold belief until there is compelling evidence. And if the universe does not comply with our predispositions, okay, then we have the wrenching obligation to accommodate to the way the universe really is.
So you step forward to say, I deny all religion because I can't see it proved scientifically?
No. You see,
the value of religious experience and the value of reaching for higher experiences.
Let me say, religion deals with history, with poetry, with great literature.
No, AC13. I hadn't seen that before, and I wouldn't want to click on that link either. But I'm sure it's retarded. It's from a flat earth Christian identity. Jesus was Aryan kook, not a serious person.
Morals, including the morality of treating compassionately the least fortunate among us. All of these are things that I endorse wholeheartedly. Where religion gets into trouble is in those cases that it pretends to know something about science. The science in the Bible, for example, was acquired by the Jews from the Babylonians during the Babylonian captivity of 600 BC. That was the best science on the planet then. But we've learned something since then. Roman Catholicism, Reformed Judaism, most of the mainstream Protestant denominations have no difficulty with the idea that humans have evolved from other creatures, that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old with the Big Bang. They don't have any trouble with that. The trouble comes with people who are biblical literalists, who believe that the Bible is dictated by the creator of the universe to an unerring stenographer.
And so therefore
and has no metaphor or allegory.
Faith is often presented like a virtue. But in plain terms, faith means believing without enough evidence.
This dude recapping.
You don't. Or somebody who says everything in this book must be considered the literal
identity.
truth, and never mind the fallibility of all the human beings involved in the writing of this book.
Okay, I mean, I accept that, but I also, the argument will be made by many is that, you don't have to, whether a specific scientific act took place as described by some biblical writer is not at the heart of the religious faith and the religious experience.
Some people agree with you, and some people don't. Some people think that every jot and tittle in the Bible is essentially throw one thing away,
Jesus
the allegory or metaphor, then it's up to everybody to make their own decision.
Then how are we, a lot of this has to do with science in the United States. Are we different than other nations?
Absolutely not. You can see this worldwide. In India, there's a madness about astrology. In Britain, it's ghosts. In Germany, it's rays coming up from the earth that can only be detected by dowsers. Every country has its own specialties. We seem to be fascinated by UFOs right now. But one thing,
what is that? Before we leave UFOs, tell me about you and Professor Mack.
John Mack is a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, who I've known for many years. We were arrested together at the Nevada nuclear test site, protesting U.S. testing in the face of a Soviet moratorium on testing. And many years ago, he asked me, what is there in this UFO business? Is there anything to it? And I said, absolutely nothing, except, of course, for a psychiatrist. He is a psychiatrist. Well,
Hey, AC13 Rain, if you did click the link, can you tell me what are a couple of his arguments? What does he say? How is it debunked? It'd be interesting to hear. I bet you anything he goes, appeal to consensus.
Looked into it and decided that there was so much emotional energy in the reports of people who claimed to be abducted that it couldn't possibly be some psychological aberration, that it had to be true. He believed his patients. I do not believe his patients. Many of these stories are about waking up from a deep sleep and finding your bed surrounded by 3 or 4 short, dour, gray, and sexually obsessed beings, who then take you to their spaceship after they slither you through your wall and perform a variety of objectionable sexual experiments.
But here we have Dr. Carl.
A lot of alien talk they had. UFO. Nothing's changed. Just pushing the Bible and pushing UFOs. Let's see this woman. Woman ignores guards at St. Peter's Basilica and sings Jesus is the answer.
Just 1 minute. There's no other.
It's like, please, ma'am, don't chimp out.
Can I do it outside?
You sing outside.
Jesus is the answer.
Dude, can they never just follow social norms? Look, this guy's like, oh, another black woman. Black woman, I'm on vacation and black woman yelling at my tourist attraction.
All the world today. Just 1 minute.
No, leave.
Sorry,
Kick her out.
Above and there's no other. Jesus is the way. I'm going out.
Racist. What a racist antichrist man this is. Look at that pillar.
Jesus is the answer.
This is how we save the white race. This woman right here. Queen.
Above and there's no
Jesus
Queen. Jesus is the way.
Hey, you better believe in Jesus or you're anti-white, guys. That's what I hear. That's what I hear from the Christ cocks, the Christ brains, all day, every day. Not worshiping the King of the Jews with your black sisters is anti-white.
Jesus is the way.
Christians doing obnoxious things, disturbing the public, disturbing the order for Jesus. We played the clip of the woman on the plane the other day. I'd be like, sit down. Jesus is fake and Jewish. Shut up.
Sagan.
Sheep.
Astronomer.
They're too comfortable.
Versus Dr. John.
Main character.
What's his first name? John Mapp. MD.
Excuse me, ma'am. This is not Sister Act.
No question. So what's the problem?
Sister acting at the Vatican.
How can scientists disagree?
He's a scientist.
Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
no, I'm asking what do you think of this man coming to these conclusions?
I think he is not using the scientific method in approaching his issue.
And when you constantly, I assume you come at him with both barrels in conversation.
And in the demon-haunted world.
And he says?
He says, I don't appreciate the emotional force.
You don't.
Of these reports. But many people awaken from a nightmare with profound emotional force. That doesn't mean that the nightmare is true. It means something went on inside our head.
You were making a point before I jumped to John Mack.
Oh, yeah. What I wanted to say is, going back to the question of...
Thanks, AC. I see that in Jack Stone. Yeah, it sounds like the same stupid shit that other flat Earth Christian identity guy was saying. Yeah, not even close. They made that with AI too. You could totally 100% tell.
Of adequate evidence on something that's emotionally really pulling you.
They appealed to consensus. Unless it's flat Earth or Jesus being
about
Jewish,
12,
then
15 years ago. And
consensus
I had a great relationship with them. I really miss them. I would love to believe that their spirits were around somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'd give almost anything to...
I saw Big Tech reading that. I didn't even read that part myself. I couldn't even bother to look through it all. He's like, yeah, Adam doesn't like Jesus. And you know who else doesn't like Jesus? ISIS. Adam's just like ISIS. Yeah. They're not sending their best at all.
Spend 5 minutes a year with them.
You hear their voices ever?
Sometimes. But 6 or 8 times since their death, I've heard it.
Regular Christians shouldn't even be allowed in the historical Jesus debate, let alone like Aryan Jesus, flat Earth believers.
Carl, just in the voice of my father or my mother. Now, I don't think that means that they're in the next room. I think it means that I've had an auditory hallucination. I was with them so long, I heard their voices so often. Why shouldn't I be able to make a vivid recollection of it?
Here's what's interesting about this for me. I mean, you won't see this, but
right, yeah, I'm sure the article says that Jesus is not Jewish, but the blonde hair, blue eye, tall European guy is. Exactly. Secret Edomite, bro.
I'll throw it at you anyway. You convinced me a long time ago that it was arrogant for me or for anyone else to believe that there wasn't some life outside of our...
To exclude the possibility.
To exclude the possibility was an arrogance of intellect that we should not assume. You couldn't prove it. You didn't know it was there, but the arrogance for you.
Right. We don't know if it's there. We don't know if it's not there. Let's look.
And if you take that, why can't you say there's a lot we don't know? There's a lot of power there that we don't know.
There's a lot we don't know.
You know,
it's what I believe.
But
that doesn't mean that every fraudulent claim has to be accepted. We demand the most rigorous standards of evidence, especially on what's important to us. So if some guy comes up to me in a channeler or a medium and says, I can put you in touch with your parents. Well, because I want so terribly to believe that, I know I have to reach in for added reserves of skepticism because I'm likely to be fooled and much more minor to have my money taken.
What was it, Jay-Z Knight? Was it?
Yeah, exactly. She has a guy named Ramtha, who's 10,000 years old. Or
35.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Ramtha.
And he tells you lots of things, but nothing about what life was like 35,000 years ago.
Shirley MacLaine believes.
Shirley MacLaine believes that Ramtha was her brother.
Things like the Loch Ness Monster, and all that.
Again, is it fake? I mean, the most famous photograph has now been shown to be a fake. But could there be a unknown mammal or even reptile of large dimensions swimming in a Scottish lake? Sure, there could. That we don't know about. Sure, there could. Who says no?
But nobody.
But the evidence does not support it. Does not demonstrate it. So do we say, oh, ridiculous? No, we don't do that. We say unproved, which is a Scottish verdict.
Some reviewers differ with your conclusions on this point, that you seem to say it's growing, this kind of pseudoscience.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't. This is part of being human. Humans have had this way of magical thinking through all of our history. The problem is that today the technology has reached formidable, maybe even awesome proportions. And so the dangers of thinking this way are larger. Not that this is a new kind
Oh my gosh, dude. You know, this reminds me, he had some viral thing where it was like he completely predicted the internet. He's like, oh, with the new technology, the disinfo, the magical thinking in the Bible charlatans, it's spreading like wildfire. Dude, if he only was still alive to see the state of the world right now, the state of the internet with all of the kooky conspiratard bullshit out there.
Thinking.
You are living with myelodysplasia.
Or I have
Real dogs, thank you.
$0 on I just got. What do you think of Sagan? Thanks for what you do.
I don't know everything about him, but I've always thought he was pretty good scientist. We're watching.
You have been. It's in remission. Or you have.
Well, you know, with disease
hand grenades.
Channel on Rumble.
Hey, thanks for the raid, horseshoe hand grenades. I got a raid last night too. I've never had a Rumble raid before. I didn't even know that was a thing. I've heard of raids, but I didn't know Rumble had them. Appreciate that. Wonder how many people came over. It doesn't say. Welcome, horseshoes, hand grenades audience. We're just doing a super late night watching my YouTube watch later queue.
Of this sort and all cancers.
Cancer of the bone marrow?
It's myelodysplasia is not exactly cancer of the bone marrow, but if untreated, it inevitably leads to leukemia. And the trouble with all these diseases is you never know that you've got every last cell. You can only detect down to a certain level. But down to the level that anybody can detect in terms of how I feel and my stamina and all that, it seems to be
I remember,
very lucky.
I remember my dad showing me like old Sagan stuff when I was little.
A sister who enabled you to have a bone marrow transplant.
That's one, and also the enormous advances in scientific, in medical science in just the last few years. If I had this thing 5 or 10 years ago, I would be dead sure as shooting. And then finally, the love and support of my family. All of those have played a central role.
So you're optimistic?
I'm very optimistic, or at least very hopeful.
And just share with us, because of your sense of language and your sense of understanding and being reflective and introspective, what do you think about, and what does it do for you to?
I didn't have any near-death experiences. I didn't have any near-death experiences. I didn't have a religious conversion, but I
thought about what it would be like to die.
Certainly, and what it would be like for my family.
I'm watching it with some friends.
I didn't much think about what it would be like for me, because I don't think
tomorrow night.
it's likely there's anything that you think about after you're dead. Yeah, long dreamless sleep. I'd love to believe the opposite, but I don't know of any evidence. But one thing,
faith, Carl, faith.
One thing that it has done is to enhance my sense of appreciation for the beauty of life and of the universe and the sheer joy of being alive.
You had a healthy portion of that before this, but even you, it happens to.
Oh, there's no question.
Appreciation.
No question. Every moment, every inanimate object, to say nothing of the exquisite complexity of living beings. You imagine missing it all, and suddenly it's so much more precious.
May you live a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Religion often wins people through emotion, especially grief and fear of death. That does not make it true. People can hear the voice of someone they lost.
No, I don't want to duck any questions. And I'm not going to duck this one, even though I have high religious personages who are close friends of mine in this room. But let me ask you, what do you mean when you use the word God?
Well, I guess what my question, it's like, is
he gave him the, this is where Jordan Peterson got it from, apparently.
Is there a purpose for, I mean, given all these demotions, why don't we just blow ourselves up?
Why don't we?
Yeah, what is our purpose? I mean,
let me turn the question around. If we do blow ourselves up, does that disprove the existence of God?
No, I guess not.
I mean, it'll be a little late to make the discovery, but still.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, since as we kind of make God almost go away in this, as he, through these demotions, and I don't mean he, because who knows what God is, but
still saying it makes it sort of icky, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's tough.
We like it to be a he, don't we?
Yeah. We've been trained to think of it as a he. It seems that through the ages, humans have created a mythological framework that has always often involved some kind of higher spiritual powers. And as
every human culture has done that.
As that goes away, as we know more and more and it seems harder and harder to prove that anything might exist.
You seen my box? Saeed sent $0 on Connie from Horseshoes, and Hand Grenade sent me the last thing he said before rating you was that Carl Sagan is definitely not Jewish. Everyone please say a prayer for.
We didn't accuse him of being Jewish. I was thinking in my head, though, I'm like, Sagan, what kind of last name is Sagan? I never thought he was Jewish. I'm sure people online will say, anybody that doesn't believe in the Bible and says science is real is they call Jewish. We can ask Grok. Maybe not. I need to refresh it. Connie. Thank you, Connie. Sagan respect.
Just like that, where does that leave us?
On our own. Which to my mind is much more responsible than hoping that someone will save us.
Did he say he was Jewish? What ethnicity is Carl Sagan? Was an American of Jewish heritage. Womp, womp, womp. His mother, Rachel Gruber, was a native New Yorker from family with working class roots. His father, Samuel Sagan, was a garment worker, immigrated from Ukraine. Both sides, Ashkenazi Jewish. Well, I'll be damned. While deeply private about his personal beliefs, he identified as a Jew. Raised in Brooklyn, New York, in a house that observed Reform Judaism. You learn something every day I never knew. So is Connie wrong? Or did I read that wrong? Carl Sagan is definitely not Jewish. Actually, he is, apparently. I was wrong. My radar was way off. Could have fooled me. No, I'm not saying he's bad because he's Jewish. I'm just saying the Christians will say he's He's a Jew trying to take us away from Jesus. Yeah, obviously atheist. Obviously doesn't believe the Bible.
From ourselves, so we don't have to make our best efforts to do it ourselves. And if we're wrong, and there is someone who steps in and saves us, okay, that's all right. I'm for that. But
I was thinking like Sagan, Kagan. It got me thinking of Kagan.
Hedged our bets. It's Pascal.
Oh, he's Jewish. Okay, maybe the earth is flat. Maybe he's wrong.
Bargain run backwards. I'll say another word. The word God covers an enormous range of different ideas, and you recognize that in the way you phrased the question. Running from an outsized, light-skinned male with a long white beard sitting in a throne in the sky and tallying the fall of every sparrow, for which there is no evidence. To my mind, if anybody has some, I sure would like to see it. To the kind of God that Einstein or Spinoza talked about, which is very close to the sum total of the laws of the universe. Now, it'd be crazy to deny that there are laws in the universe, and if that's what you want to call God, then of course God exists. And there are all sorts of other nuances. There is, for example, the deist God that many of the founding fathers of this country believed in, although it is a secret whose name may not be spoken in some circles, a roi fainéant, a do-nothing king, the God who creates the universe and then retires.
Horseshoe's hand grenade
And
sent
to whom-
$0 on it. You seen my box. I eat is the real enemy because his name sounds.
Is that somebody in the chat? Thank you, Horseshoe Hand Grenades. Is that somebody in the chat with that name? I don't recognize that name.
Praying to is sort of pointless. He's not here. He went somewhere else. He had other things to do. Now, that's also a God. So when you say, do you believe in God? If I say yes or if I say no, you have learned absolutely nothing.
I guess I'm asking you to define yours if you have one.
But why would we use a word so ambiguous that means so many different things?
It gives you freedom to define it.
It gives you freedom to seem to agree with someone else with whom you do not agree. It covers over differences. To agree makes for social lubrication, but it is not an aid to truth, in my view. And therefore, I think we need much sharper language.
Oh, okay, I see. Right. They just sent a super chat in. Last thing he said before rating was that Carl Sagan don't much. That's funny. Rumble rant war. I got it, yeah. He's the real enemy. Well, he's the enemy because he lied to us. Connie from Horseshoe Hand Renegades, did you really say he's definitely not Jewish? Was that a joke, or were you just way off? Your radar's off. Mine was apparently too.
Language when we ask these questions. Sorry to take so long in answering this, but this is an important issue.
The word God is often kept vague on purpose. When religion needs comfort,
All right.
God...
What time? 11:30. I'm gonna go. I gotta try to brush my teeth and take a shower and get ready before midnight, because we're sleep maxing with the Fitbit. It tracks me, and my youngest is waking me up super early every morning. So I appreciate you guys for hanging with me tonight. Sorry to close out right when we got the raid and got a few more people in here, but it is late. And I got to get to bed. You guys should get to bed too. So appreciate everybody for the donos, hanging out, watching some stuff with me tonight. Maybe we'll do it again tomorrow night. We're going to start doing a lot more nights.
Horseshoe's
You've been on my
hand
show and it
grenade
has the
sent
most views.
$0 on Adam. You have been on my show and it has the most. No, I didn't say that Jew is a Jew.
I thought so. Cool. All right. All right. It is so hot in here. It's really heating up. I'm ready to cut off all my hair, how hot it is. This mop is like hot on my head. I have to go Viking mode and shave off the sides again. It's hot down here. All right. That's why no more suits anymore, too. It's sweating in those suits. I don't belong here. I belong in the Northwest. Northman type of climate. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Have a nice night. See you Monday. See you Monday morning for a real show. Real No More News show. Not just lazy Not lazy. We're researching. We did some deep research tonight. Covered some ground. Bald, Max. I'm not bald, bro. I'm just going to shave the sides. Viking style. All right, take care, guys.
Yeshua, Rasta King Selassie was Jesus in blackface, hiding from Babylon.
Y'all shave the sides and get dreads like Tom McDonald.
He didn't die on the cross.
Then maybe I'll go viral. And just get a bunch of copper, the copper dude.
On 420, Yeshua smokes the herbal chalice and curses Hitler's birthday. Christ gonna get high, 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 high in Hyperborea. Yeshua gonna mash, mash, mash down Babylon. Yeshua was a Rasta. His eyes are blue and he's not a Jew. Yeshua was a Rasta. He's as blonde as the Lebanese ash he smokes. Yeshua was a Rasta. His pure iron DNA is the most potent strain the world has ever seen. Christ gonna get high, 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 high in Hyperborea. Yeshua gonna mash, mash, mash down Babylon. Yeshua was a Rasta. He smokes cross-shaped joints every day. Yeshua was a Rasta. He's not brown like hash, he's white like deity diamond. Was a Rasta. He would smoke hookah on a donkey and teach from the Torah like a true Hyperborean or Rasta man. Christ gonna get high, 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 high in Hyperborea. Yeshua gonna mash, mash, mash down Babylon. Yeshua was a Rasta. His eyes are blue and he's not a Jew. Yeshua was a Rasta. He's as blonde as the Lebanese ash he smoked. Yeshua was a Rasta. His pure iron DNA is the most potent strain the world has ever seen. Christ gonna get high, 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 high in Hyperborea. Yeshua gonna mash, mash, mash down Babylon. Yeshua was a Rasta. High in Hyperborea was a Rasta. Down Babylon was a Rasta. High in Hyperborea was a Rasta. High in Hyperborea was a Rasta. Down